We now move on to Chris Smith, who will, I'm sort of thrown in at the deep end because he didn't expect to speak today, but Chris will present how he perceives the situation with family courts as somebody who has suffered from the family courts.
Thank you, John. Yeah, my name's Chris Smith, and I lost 2 small children to forced adoption back in 2003. And until that point, I had an average view of how the care system worked. But what I didn't realise at that time was how the intent and the malicious treatment could be given from the professionals such as social workers and many others operating within the care arena. What transpired during the few months that the children were accommodated in care and up to the final hearing was, unfortunately, that local authority had deliberately withheld critical information from the courts, which they would not release copies to us. And when we challenged them over the accuracy of the statements to the court, they said that that was totally accurate, thus committing perjury. I realised as time went by that I was going to lose the case no matter what I seemed to do or what I said. And unfortunately in September 2003 I lost the children. I too at the time was based in Essex and in just outside Chelmsford. And what struck me as odd was that no machine could be so well oiled in the way that it moved forward unless this was a natural occurrence. So I got involved in a group called Parents Against Injustice at the time, and we did some lobbying and various other work with press, and we had many families come to us during the course of the time, which just really supported everything that had happened to me, that had transpired. And I am no longer involved in the group because obviously the emotional strain was too much for me, having lost 2 children and then having to sort of put myself forward all the time with other family members that were coming to me with their own individual cases. And I respect people like Jack now that are involved in these cases, actually taking up the fight on behalf of families and trying to get this into the public arena. Just really to sort of just summarise, I did go back to court on appeal, but 2 years after the final hearing, and I was turned down because in law adoption is final. There is no going back. And the appeal judges, and we're talking about people like Thorpe LJ and Ward LJ, who actually said, and it's on the court records, that had I been able to bring that evidence to them within the time frame after the final hearing, which you're only given a 3-month window, which is a very small window of appeal, then they would have been more than happy to have granted the appeal. But because it was too late, there was nothing they could do, and it would be too traumatic to remove the children from their current placement back with their natural birth parent. Interestingly enough, it seems to me that social services are quite happy to commit all sorts of abuse to children by moving them from one place to another. But when there's a situation like this of reintroducing a natural birth parent back to their children, there is no way back. There is no openings, there's nothing in law, there's nothing that can be done. The only people that have parental responsibility are the adopters. I've carried on looking at what's going to happen in the future and how I may reunite myself with my children at some stage in the future. And what they must be thinking and what they must be told, because one of the things that's critically important is that children are told about their family background. Well, I've since uncovered that the family were given misinformation about me, which again is only going to be cascaded down to the children. So one has to question again the local authorities' motives. Just to pin up what Jack said about the police, I took my case to the police in April 2005, once I had all the evidence that proved that the local authority deliberately set out to pervert the course of justice and committed perjury. After I went to the police, 6 other families, including Jack, also took their case to the police in Essex. Essex had various meetings, and then on a technicality have used a justice's ruling that they are not allowed to investigate allegations of perjury. Despite much effort on Jack's part, still nothing has been done about it. So in effect we are harbouring criminals within the local authority structure and mainframe. And it's fantastic to see that some MPs and councillors amongst us today are actually starting to take note of what this is. And I think it's absolutely appalling that this can be done to families. This is really legalised child snatching. And what it all comes down to is one thing: it's taxpayers' money, nothing else. because the amount of money that is changing hands within the childcare arena is phenomenal, both in court costs and also foster care costs. Adoption agencies charge in excess of £12,000 for placing one child with adoption, and this is recommended by the British Association of Adoption and Fostering, who happen to be run by social workers, senior ones at that. And when you start looking into how much money the adoption agencies are turning over, it is appalling. We're not talking about a few £100,000. We are talking millions and millions and millions of taxpayers' money. And it's about time that the public realise what was actually going on within the childcare arena. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. And obviously Essex, and we have an MP here from Essex, and a councillor from Essex as well, has problems, but it's actually a national problem.